Hello and welcome to another episode of the Silk and Steel podcast. I'm your host, Carl Zab. Today, I have back on my show Arnaud Bertrand, a French entrepreneur currently residing in Malaysia. Arnaud writes prolifically about issue relating China, international politics, and um, and in particular in relationship to Europe. The reason I want, first of all, welcome back to the show, Arnold. How are you?
Thank you.
Uh,
Glad to be back. I'm good. And you?
Good, good. The reason I want you to have you back on the show is because, currently there's, Trump is busy blowing up the world, uh, by waging a war on Iran.
Mm.
Now, I wanted to, uh, find out from a European perspective on what role Europe is playing in this, because right as we speak, Trump has repeatedly said he wants allies to form a coalition of willing, a peace board for the Hormuz Strait to open up the Strait of Hormuz, and he's been complaining that NATO has been slacking, it's been weak, and he wants everybody to join in the effort to wage this war on Iran. France, you are French, so first of all, I want to ask you about the reaction, the French reaction, because it's interesting because Macron, we know previously from leaked messages that Macron actually sent a message to Trump over the whole Greenland ordeal and said, "Hey, we work out perfectly on Syria. We can work together again on Iran. Why are you doing this on Greenland thing? I don't understand." So obviously French was on board, but it's a then France was set to send its aircraft carrier, Charles de Gaulle, to head over that direction, and now the French is saying no, no, actually they're not doing that. What is going on?
Yeah, I mean, France, I don't think, if you try to look for coherence in the French position with Macron on foreign policy, good luck to you, because you won't find any. So on this issue, on just about any issue with Macron, the French policy has been completely incoherent. So they started, when the war started, Macron, issued a joint statement together with Merz and Starmer in the UK, basically blaming Iran for the war. Literally the day after the US and Israel started the war, they were like, we beg Iran to go back to the negotiating table. I wrote about it. I was like, the US literally just killed the negotiating team. That's like, completely crazy statements. But then Macron, he always has this, in France, we call it en même temps, at the same time. So he always tries to play both positions of anything. So he also, did a joint initiative with China out of all countries, saying that they would help, negotiate a ceasefire between for Iran. So, on one hand, he's like extreme pro-US and so on. On the other hand, he's like going with China. So there is literally no coherence whatsoever. And like you said, one day we'll send the aircraft carrier, the other day he doesn't. There was also something with French troops being involved. I think it was in Iraq, and one French soldier got killed. So you actually literally had soldiers on the ground. No one quite knows what happened. There is some theory that the French were trying to recruit Kurdish fighters in Iraq, but it's rumors. So yeah, there is very little coherence. When you take a step back, though, and I wrote an article about that last week, it's very clear that this war is very detrimental to European interests, simply because of the energy aspect. Because Europe overall imports almost 60% of its energy. I think the actual number is 59%. And obviously, the big theme of this war is that energy prices are we're witnessing the biggest energy supply shock in history, literally, with oil prices and LNG prices and so on going through the roof. Qatar, which was one of the big LNG suppliers to Europe, is basically off the grid, if you can speak this way. So it's extremely bad news for the European economy. So if European sort of index their position on their interests, they will be extremely against this war because of the energy question. You also have the migration question. As a reminder, Iran is a massive country with 90 million people. And if the war goes on, then of course you're going to have a big exodus from the country. That's the way, it always goes in war. And so you may have millions of people leaving the country, and Europe is not far away. I mean, you have Iran, and then you have Turkey, and then you have Europe, right? So you could see a Syria-like situation where, or Afghanistan-like situation where, a lot of refugees found their way to Europe, which, creates political problems and so on and so forth. So no matter how you look at it, it's very bad news for Europe. But the other European problem, of course, is that we're so dependent on the US, which means that it's very hard for European leaders to say anything too direct against the US. So that's why you're seeing the usual very weak response.
Yeah, I mean, Europe is kind of between a rock and a hard place because, on one hand, they have been trying to weaning themselves from cheap Russian energy, and now Qatar was supposed to be the Qatar gas was supposed to make up for the cutting off of the Russian gas, but now Qatar is also getting cut off. I think that's one of the reasons that compel United States to waiver the sanction against, what they say is a temporary waiver of sanction against Russian oil and gas, because they realized they really needed to increase the supply to the market. Because oil and gas are fungible commodities. So if you take away a part of that supply, the supply constraint is going to felt all across the world. But in Europe's case, it's going to be felt more acutely because, unlike some other countries, China is actually pretty well positioned to weather the storm because China has did a massive build out of their both their electric grid and also like sustainable energy like solar, wind, and nuclear.
Exactly.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that was actually the topic of my article because everyone kept mentioning that the main target is China. That it was, I think Lindsey Graham, the U.S. senator, said that's a nightmare for China. But actually, China, many people don't realize how self-sufficient it is. Like last year, I checked the statistics; it reached 85% energy self-sufficiency. Like it generates domestically 85% of its energy. On Iran, when you look at it, it's only 1.5% of China's energy. On the Strait of Hormuz is about a third of China's oil. When you look at it on the total energy, it's way lower than that. So, and China has very big strategic reserves, I think, for 6 months worth of oil. So even if they receive no oil from any country, it will be able to continue at the same consumption rate for 6 months. And China has Russia, which is the world's second biggest producer of oil. And contrary to Europeans, they still have a very good relationship with Russia. They've built pipelines and so on and so forth. So I actually, and I wrote that this could actually prove to be good news for China, because if anything, what this energy crisis is the best advertisement ever for Chinese EVs on green energy, right? Because if you do like China, if you do a ramp up of green energy and you get a lot of your energy from that, of course you're less exposed to changes in the price of oil and so on and so forth. So what we're very likely to see is a huge boom in exportations by China for solar panels and so on. I'm seeing the discussion right here in Malaysia, because Malaysia is actually has not done a good job when it comes to green energy, and people are hurting. Like the price at the pump has almost doubled since the beginning of the Iran war, and so that's obviously hurting people's wallets in a big way. But and you see very few EVs on the roads, but if more people had EVs, if you had electricity generated by solar panels, by wind, and so on and so forth, then of course it will be much more resilient. So I think that would be one of the main lessons of this. Yeah. So and what I wrote in the article is, don't worry about China, worry about Europe, because they're in a much worse place than China.
Yeah, I'm so glad I bought a Chinese EV last year. So I'm gonna put solar panels on my roof, so I'll be even more energy independent. So in Europe, the case though, now Trump is repeatedly saying he wants to put a coalition together to open the Strait of Hormuz. Do you think this will? Is there any possibility that any European country will actually join?
I don't think so. I mean, if you, the German statement yesterday was quite funny. I mean, Germany is normally one of the countries that is the most subservient to the US, because they are literally occupied still to this day. You have massive American bases in Germany, like Ramstein and so on. And the German defense minister quite literally told the Americans to go F themselves. Like the statement was quite. So I don't see this as a likely possibility. It's basically Trump's mess, and no one wants to be involved in that. Especially, I mean, what the German minister said is like, you have the American Navy, which is the world's most powerful navy. That's what he said. It's not true. It's China's, but that's what he said. What is a couple of German ships gonna do on top that you can't achieve? It's like that doesn't make any sense. He basically said, you just want us to be involved to sort of make us bear the sort of the political fallout from the whole thing, instead of having to own it yourself. So I think that is what Trump is trying to do, and obviously no one wants to touch that with a 10-foot pole.
Yeah, I mean, United States is the largest military within NATO. I mean, if United States can't do it, how is the expectation that a couple more European ships will help? I mean, and militarily, it's almost impossible to open the Strait of Hormuz when Iranian missiles and drones can reach it from all sides, and it's completely ridiculous. But what is Europe's plan now? I mean, now that it's in the position that it is in, not of its own making. Well, okay, I mean, like, I think Europe do bear some responsibility for encouraging United States adventures in the West Asia, but mostly it is still driven by United States. What is the plan in Europe now? What is a political chatter within Europe like about this war?
I mean, I follow mostly the French chatter, and I mean, quite universally they were. I'm speaking about mainstream media and mainstream politicians. So at the beginning of the war, they were quite I mean, anti-Iran, basically. I mean, the usual stuff like, it's an awful dictatorship, and regime. What about Iranian women? And it's great if we get a change. But now that you have the energy fallout, the conversation has changed quite a bit, where it's shifted to Trump being in a quagmire, basically. So everyone can see that things are not going well. But what the conversation is not, on what people have not, on what worries me a lot, is people haven't understood the consequences for Europe. So they're all like, they basically have a bit of a schadenfreude when it comes to Trump. Like, look at that idiot, what kind of mess he put himself in. But when you look at it, actually, the consequences are probably far worse for Europe than the US. And again, it's due to energy. Like, the US is self-sufficient when it comes to oil. In fact, they're a massive exporter of both oil and LNG. Like, now they're the world's biggest exporter of both. And so, it's not only negative for them, it's also positive, because when energy prices increase, of course, they make that much more profits. And who do they profit from? From Europeans. I checked in 2018, so before the war in Ukraine, we used to import only 4% of our oil and gas from the US. Now we're up to 23% due to the war in Ukraine. And that's likely to increase even further with this, because, Qatar is off, but we still need that LNG. And of course, the Americans are like, hey guys, we have LNG if you want. So and that conversation is not there in Europe. And even what worries me even more is that even people who should normally speak about those topics, like in France, we have that guy called Mélenchon. Maybe you've heard of him. So he's kind of the anti-imperialist left. So very, I would say quite anti-American in the French tradition and so on. But even he follows the neocon narrative that this war is about China and we need to be worried about China and so on. I mean, he follows the same script as as American neocons, but obviously in the opposite way. So neocons say, this is about China, we're gonna uncycle them and it's great. And Mélenchon says, yeah, this is about China, the US are gonna uncycle them, and that's very worrying. But it's the same script, right? But what Mélenchon should really be worried about is not China, it's Europe, because the situation. So, yeah, that's what we're seeing. Like, no one cares about Europe anymore in Europe, which drives me crazy.
Yeah, even few days ago, European countries are still detaining Russian tankers, which is really crazy because at this time you want to increase the oil and gas supply. You don't want to further constrain it. Like by taking off the Russian oil and gas off on the market, you're only going to help with the price increase. And this is also at the same time when United States itself already waived the sanction on Russian oil and gas. It's really crazy because I saw I think it was a minister of Sweden was boasting about how Sweden they just exercise their rights to seize a Russian tanker. Like, what are you doing? What do you think you're doing in the context of this war? Yeah, it's nuts. I and I think this is gonna people don't realize how much further impact is gonna go even beyond the price at the gas pump because China already announced first of all they have stopped exporting gasoline and diesel. People might be surprised to hear, oh, China export gasoline and diesel. Yes, because China has a huge refining capacity. So China export a lot of gas and diesel mostly to Asian countries. To places like Singapore. Of course, Singapore is not a end consumer; it's just a reseller, and it sells to other. I saw a stats from Australia. Australia actually gets 30%, 32% of jet fuel from Singapore, and no, from China. 32% of this jet fuel from China. Now it's cut off because China is not exporting that anymore. And China also has announced that it's going to stop exporting the nitrogen potassium fertilizer, because those are also synthesized from oil and gas. And that's huge because, that's going to impact agriculture. We're now in the planting season, in the spring. This is when there's a great demand for fertilizers, and the stoppage of oil and gas coming out of Gulf also means a severe bottleneck on the fertilizer supplies all around the world. Of course, China have to do what they do to protect its own domestic industry, and its domestic agriculture. But the rest of the world, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what is going to happen. The entire world's food supply is at jeopardy right now, all thanks to reckless action of Trump.
Yeah, it's insane, and on the carelessness with which Trump is replaying is crazy. Like I saw just yesterday, he said, "You know what? Maybe we shouldn't be there. Maybe it wasn't such a good idea." I mean, he just careless. Like he didn't like his own action are directly impacting the lives negatively of billions of people, and he's like, yeah, maybe not such a good idea after all. Yeah, so it's quite insane. Yeah, scary.
Okay, so there's no political pressure in Europe right now to building up to even to bring a political solution to this. I mean, like you would think at this point in time there will be a strong incentive among all other countries to pressure United States to stopping this insanity, and to but it doesn't look like that's happening, at least not from the European quarters.
No, no, no. It's the only voice in Europe that you hear against this is Spain. So Pedro Sanchez, um, but it's not that important a country in Europe. Spain is a relatively small country and is literally the lone voice. When again, if Europeans were pursuing their actual interests, they will all be speaking like Spain, and you can see why they don't, because the first thing that Trump did after Spain spoke out is react violently, saying that he will cut all trade relations with the country. So that's the leverage that.
And Trump's statement was supported by the German Prime Minister Merz. He went on record of saying, "Yeah, well, let's do that. Let's embargo Spain," which is crazy.
Exactly. Yeah, in the Oval Office, he validated what Trump was saying. Although I think that Merz's validation was more on NATO, that Spain didn't want to increase its NATO spending to the 5% that Trump was asking for, which is another topic. Like that is like a tribute payment because Trump wants all European countries to increase their defense spending to 5%. And of course, where does that money go? It doesn't go to the European defense industry. It goes to buy American weapons, which is good for the American economy, and also it makes Europe even more dependent on the Americans. So Spain rightly was like, that's madness. It doesn't make any sense, no matter how you look at it. And that's what Merz was reacting to. So yeah, it's bleak. It's very, very bleak. And I'm afraid it will take a whole new generation of leaders in Europe to get us out of that. And when you look at the next generation, like the young folks coming next, at least in France, they're also, like, maybe even to a greater extent, completely oblivious to all those topics. So I think it's not even going to be the next generation, but probably the one after that one. It's the saying, weak men create hard times, and on hard times create strong men. We're far away from the strong men in Europe, unfortunately.
We're just gonna see. We're just seeing the beginning of hard time right now. I mean, we're not even anywhere close to getting through the middle of it. I think a lot of people have really grown complacent over the 80 years after World War II, and yeah, it is what it is. Okay, so let's I want to shift the focus a little bit back to Trump. Do you think Trump is trying to seeking an off ramp to wrap up this conflict? Because recently he made statements saying he made various statements to suggest we United States, this is not even our business. Like we don't import that much oil from the Gulf. It's other country that should be worried about it. It seems like he's signaling that he's seeking some sort of off ramp, so he will able to get out of this conflict while still declaring victory. Mission accomplished, basically, Trump style. Do you think that's likely?
Yeah. I mean, that's clearly the case. He's clearly trying to find a way out, and I think that's what is asked about about help is all about. That's basically what he did in Ukraine, right? The US was very much involved, and then when Trump came in, he promised to solve the conflict in one day, but really what he did was put all the burden on Europeans, not financing it anymore, and basically it's a PR tactic because he knows the war is being lost. So it's a PR tactic to make sure that the loss is on others and not on the US. So you can be 100% sure that if as Europeans or even as China you get involved, then a few months down the line or a few weeks down the line is going to be like these losers and their war in Iran. It's a good thing we got it with a win, and they're losing it like idiots. So yeah, that's obviously his plan, and that's why it's not going to work out. No, I mean Europeans saw exactly what happened with Ukraine, so the Europeans are stupid, but not to that extent, hopefully. On China, of course, like you've never heard of a great power seeing their adversary lose a war and be like, yeah, let's get involved. Great. On the side of the adversary. I mean, it makes zero sense whatsoever.
Especially when all these pro-Trump think tanks were televising that, oh, this war was really about United States trying to choke off energy supply to China, and now Trump is publicly asking help from China to end this, which is where this is, what can you do? We live in the comedy hour.
Yeah, exactly. It is quite funny, like from Lindsey Graham saying that this is China's nightmare. That a couple of days afterwards, you have Trump literally inviting the PLA to police the Strait of Hormuz. It's actually quite funny. Yeah, I think I mean obviously the US is gonna remain alone in this, and then it's a question of how Trump can get out of it on his own without looking like too much of a failure. That's not gonna be difficult. That's why he might stay actually on double down.
Yeah, that's what I'm worried about, because right now they have dismantled the THAAD anti-missile system in South Korea, and they're sending them over to West Asia. And also they just dispatched 5,000 Marines from the US bases in Okinawa, and they're on their way to sailing to toward Iran right now. And that it will take about at least 2 weeks for the new Marines to arrive. So I'm thinking, does that mean that the war is going to drag on for another 2 weeks? I mean, I don't know how much longer we can take this closure of the strait. And by the way, because earlier you said, oh, at the beginning of the war, the Europeans were quite anti-Iran. I'm thinking, beginning of the war was only like less than 3 weeks ago. It shows how much things change in 3 weeks time. It wasn't that long ago.
Yeah, it's incredible. Yeah. And I think we're in the funny situation where I think most Americans even are against the war now, from what you see on Twitter and so on. Like even neocons now are against the war. Like even John Bolton, whose entire career was all about war with Iran. Like Trump has even lost John Bolton, and it wouldn't surprise me if you did a survey in the US, if most Americans were not rooting for Iran at this stage. like, yeah, there is I think there is a feeling, certainly in the West, amongst the population, even amongst the American population, that this is just way too hubristic. It's like peak hubris, and on its time, America learns a lesson about those types of adventures, because it's way too careless about this. So yeah, whether Trump can actually learn the lesson is yeah, very doubtful, unfortunately.
There's actually a article that just came out on New York Times. Well, not just came out, like came out a week ago. That actually made the argument that United States, this is gonna hurt U.S. Even more so than its U.S. peers, including Europe, because U.S. is U.S. economy is more oil intensive than even Russia. Oil producing another oil producing country. America's economy is more than 40% more oil intensive than China, and the European Union's economy is half as oil intensive as America's. Even Russia, a petrol state, is about 20% less reliant on oil per unit of economic input than United States is. Yeah, I think it hasn't really sunk in yet, because there's kind of delayed effect in the full impact of the closure of Strait of Hormuz. People are really not liking this because the price at the pump has increased, but there's gonna be a whole wave of inflationary pressures. The price at the pump, because so much of the modern economy still depends on hydrocarbon, unfortunately. Like we make everything from fertilizer to plastics, and now and I just saw that Taiwan depends on 60% of its helium supplies from Qatar, and the helium is a very important component in the semiconductor manufacturing. Yeah, so there's the whole supply chain is gonna hit across the board.
Yeah, yeah. I think the picture is actually, for the US, is mixed, because it's very oil intensive, but they're also the world's main exporter of oil, and oil companies are making big bucks these days with this, and Europeans and maybe others will, because the Middle East is so disrupted right now, will go to them to order more, to get more supply. So there will be a mixed picture, but over the long run, it's certainly going to impress upon many countries that dependence on oil is too much. Dependence on oil is a huge tragic liability. So over the long run, it actually favors China's model, which is depend on your sun, on your wind, instead of oil. Like be independent when it comes to energy. So I think that's one of the ironies with the war. Trump presumably wanted to do it in order to get control of Iran's oil, and so have a bigger share of the cake. If the cake is like global oil production, the US will control, on top of Venezuela now, Iran. But I think the effect is also that it's going to shrink the cake a lot. And in any case, it's not looking likely that they're going to get the Iran share of the cake. So yeah, it's over the long run, I think it's pretty bad for the US as well.
Oh, by the way, Iran is the one that's actually dictating the flow of oil right now. I mean,
So
Iran gets to
yeah,
decide which oil tankers from which country gets to go where. It's not United States
yeah,
at this point. I
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
I saw a
And
meme.
there was a hilarious statement yesterday by the US. Yeah, yesterday Scott Bessent said, "We've decided to allow Iran's oil to go through the Strait of Hormuz," which was hilarious because the whole issue is that Iran controls the Strait of Hormuz, and actually Iran's oil, is going through it at the same rate as it was always the case. So yeah,
Yeah, and there's some dumb American commentators, I think, likes of Gordon Chan, saying, "Oh, why are we allowing Iranian tankers to sail through, on its way to China?" Look, man, right now, United States is doing whatever it can, trying to increase the world oil supply. More Iranian oil goes to China, it actually relieves the pressure on the world oil market because oil is a commodity, is a fungible commodity. If China buys more oil from Iran, that means China can will purchase less oil from elsewhere, free up more oil capacity. This is why United States attack on the Iranian island that hosts the majority of Iran's oil facilities. They targeted everything except the Iranian oil facilities because even United States understand they need to increase the oil supply, not to further constrain it. So yeah, it's
yeah.
it's crazy times, man. Crazy times we live in.
Now, and there is also a big AI dimension, which is quite interesting. I don't know if you saw, but I think the only Trump administration official who publicly went against the war is David Sachs, who is the AI czar. Because he understands that for AI this is terrible news, because AI is a lot about the price of energy and about global supply chains of semiconductors and so on. Like you just pointed out, semiconductor production relies on helium and so on and so forth. And also they had huge AI plans in the Middle East. David Sachs inaugurated a 5 gigawatts data center. I think it was in Qatar, the world's biggest for AI. And he said this would be like transformational for US AI. It will enable us to take the lead or whatever. Like he had several quotes like this. A couple of weeks after, his president literally embraced the entire region into a regional war. So obviously he's not quite happy. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people don't realize the reason they're putting a lot of AI centers in West Asia, particularly in the Gulf countries, is because they AI is very energy intensive. So they put AI data center right next to the source of energy. And now Iranian missiles and drones are hitting those very same AI data centers. Um, yeah, and not to mention that the US AI bubble, they require a lot of funding coming from the Gulf money. I mean, they
Yeah.
the whole, like, this 500 billion investment into Stargate project. That money wasn't, there were it wasn't Americans that was supposed to expected to come up with the money. It was supposed to come from those Gulf monarchies. And the Gulf countries
Yeah.
recently just announced that they're going to curtail their investment into United States because they need that money themselves to focus on rebuilding. So yeah, this is gonna have multiple
Yeah.
multiplication effect on U.S. economy, because you know U.S. economy, if you take away all these AI investment, you know, the economy is actually not growing. A lot of the so-called growth was actually in the AI sector. You know, if you take that away, US will be in
Yeah.
recession already.
Yeah. And exactly, that's very bad news. And another thing that David Sachs said that I thought was interesting and also super scary is how close the entire region is to literal annihilation. Because, as he pointed out, it's a desert, obviously, most of those countries, and they rely a lot on desalination facilities. And I think, for instance, Riyadh, the country, the capital of Saudi Arabia, relies entirely on one big desalination plant. So if that one is hit or disrupted in any way, or if a lot of those facilities are disrupted, you could be seeing quite literally the end of life in the entire region. So this is insane, and this could happen because you already had, I think, I don't know if it was the US or Israel, hit one desalination plant in Iran.
Iran.
So yeah, they've started to hit those types of facilities, and it's not only about a desalination plant could be out of service even if it doesn't get hit. So, for instance, it would be enough. I spoke to a specialist about that. It would be enough if there was a massive oil spill in the sea, which could very well happen with all the missiles and on drone attacks on oil cargo. So, if there was a massive oil spill, then obviously the water that will be extracted from the sea would be tainted, and so those desalination plants could not function, and that would have the same impact. So we are actually very, very close to a massive catastrophe that could mean the end of life as we know it in the Middle East, which is quite crazy.
Yeah, which is really, you know, you mentioned that U.S. Israeli strike on Iranian desalination plant. Iran also depend on desalination plants, but their dependency is like in the single digits, whereas the other countries in the Gulf, you know, it goes up to like 80-90%, and even Israel's 60% of Israeli drinking water come from just 5 desalination plants. So this is gonna be the unrestricted war is gonna be terrible for all these so-called U.S. allies. And this is why I think in a way Iran is single-handedly dismantling the U.S. imperial system in West Asia right now, because a lot, you know, the whole cost benefit analysis for these countries to be part of the US imperial system is that US was supposed to provide them with a security umbrella. Well, look right now looks like that
Yeah,
security umbrella is very leaky or even non-existent
yeah,
in some cases. So
yeah, yeah,
and in turn they're actually bearing the cost. They're bearing the cost of being hit by Iranian missile. The U.S. alliance is not making them safer. It's actually making them the target. And I think that's the lesson also, to you know for the so-called the U.S. allies in East Asia. You know, all those U.S. bases in South Korea, in Japan, in the Philippines, in Australia. Well, witness what's happening to those bases in West Asia right now, and just keep in mind that China has a magnitude more missiles more advanced missiles in store. So, all the countries, I think in back of their mind, they have to realize what this means, and this could be a shake up of the whole security system around the world.
Yeah, absolutely. There was this narrative in some American media that countries like Saudi Arabia lobbied the US to intervene. But I spoke to a couple of specialists of Saudi Arabia, and they told me it's the exact contrary. Like, they really did not want this war because they understood full well that the consequences would be very negative for them, and they are. They gain nothing from this. And another point is that in terms of security arrangement, what this war also shows is the very small limits of American power. I mean, just 2 weeks, the entire arsenal is getting depleted by a relatively weak power that is Iran, to the extent that they need to bring in additional supplies that they hadn't counted on from Asia, like the THAAD from South Korea, the Marines from Japan, and so on and so forth. So it's another hole in the this is a strategy to contain China. It's the first step on the grand war towards China. Like, if you think if Iran can do this to the US in 2 weeks, like, there is literally no hope, against China. I think it's impresses upon, like, everyone can see that, like, the king is naked, basically.
Yeah, this is why I've been telling people, especially some people on the left or on the resistance, whatever you call it, they seem to think that US is this omnipotent beast, that now omnipotent but omnipresent, that can be at all place at all time. No. US empire face serious resource constraint. If anything, this war has shown is that forget about war against China. Don't even think about it. It's not gonna happen. And the pivot to Asia, as it turns out, is a pivot to West Asia, right? They're literally dismantling their military hardware right now in the Asia Pacific region to ship to West Asia. So yeah.
I'm 100% with you on this. Is genuinely the thing that annoys me the most on the so-called anti-imperialist left. Like, there are a lot of people who oppose US imperialism in practice, in theory, sorry, but they insist on the US eternal might in practice. Like, to me, that is the same as being an imperialist at the end of the day, where you're like,
it's an inversion of the kind of American centric. You're just being American centric from a different perspective, right? Like,
exactly.
Yeah. There's it's just American inversion of American exceptionalism. U.S. is like exceptional. U.S. is exceptional in some ways, but come on, it's not an omnipotent being that can do whatever he wants. There's limit. There's limit of physics. There's limit of resources. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's why I'm always a bit uncomfortable with the narrative that whenever anything happens anywhere, it's always the CIA and the US behind it. Like, first of all, it means that no one outside the US has any agency, because it's only ever the US who decides anything that happens anywhere in the world. Like, people can't decide on their own, which is already kind of racist in a way. or at least denying that anyone has free will outside of Americans. And I think that's the type of narrative that actually pleases the CIA enormously.
Well, they're not that competent.
Yeah, these
they're not that competent.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They're like, even people who oppose us think that we're like this omnipotent, mighty force that is everywhere. That's exactly what we want them to think. When actually the truth is that, as is obvious in the war in Iran, they're actually stunningly incompetent and not very strategic at all.
Very dumb. Very dumb. Well, on that uplifting note, I think we can wrap this up. Arnaud, if people want to follow your work, where would they go?
So it's easy. I'm on Twitter and Substack under my name.
Okay, thank you. Arnaud Bertrand, ladies and gentlemen, always make sure to give him a follow. He writes very eloquently on on all the China related matters. Highly respected. I always read your tweets. Normally I don't bother with really long tweets because I don't have time for that. But for your tweets, they're actually provide real value. So thank you for that, Arnaud, and thanks for everyone who tuned in. Until next time, bye bye.